Great Newsome, Winter Warmth, Ruby Ale.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. This is the Great Newsome Winter Warmth, and it is the first in the series of Christmas beers that I've got for the run up to Christmas. Now, I don't know about you, but I fucking hate Christmas. I hate the fucking jolly holly fest that it is, the whole fucking shebang about it, the spend, the gluttony, the whole thing. I do enjoy reading about the traditions of Christmas from days gone by, like in sort of Viking times, where all the traditions come from the Yule log, the Christmas tree, etc. I'm trying to be serious here, and I've got Percy jumping out at me, giving me his googly eyes. He's been hanging around me since I've got this beer. I think he sniffed out a good one here. It's either that, or it's got a spring, because it's got a Springer Spaniel on the front. I'll get onto that in a bit. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, I do enjoy the traditions of Christmas. And when you look at it, I don't want to get too political and too philosophical, but you can see where Christianity has stolen the old pagan ways of the winter solstice and used it for their own ends, really. I imagine, and you know, if you're Christian, you know, you're probably going to get offended by this, but you know, if you want to live in a democracy, you're going to be offended. If you don't want to be offended, don't live in a democracy. But if you look at the way the traditions have been, well, do I say the word stolen or do I say borrowed? I'd sort of say stolen, actually, because it was from what I can gather, it was a massive marketing stunt. So basically stealing all the old pagan festivals, like Ostra was used for Easter, the Christmas festivals all based around the winter solstice, etc. So you get, you know, May Day and stuff like that. It's all taken from the old pagan calendar. So it's a bit of it's a bit of a sort of a marketing ploy by the Christians, all this, you know, all the festivities and all that, and you just think, oh, just fuck off with it all. But there is the point I'm trying to make in a very bad way is that there are some good beers that do come out at Christmas. Now, there's some very good German Christmas beers, which I'll be trying to get onto before Christmas, but for now, I just want to do the British beers. And I've got Percy snorting at me. If you could see his face. Oh, come on in. He wants to get up here, and last night actually, he was sitting on my lap, and I don't know what he did, but he was falling down, and his arse was slipping off my legs, and I grabbed hold of him, and he let out the biggest fart I've ever heard him do. Now, he was eating pasta, and it had a lot of tomato in it, and so tomatoes are okay for dogs, but they're not the greatest. They're like onions. They really do upset their stomach if they eat too much of them, and I think he had too much. Let go of my mic, lead, you little git. But this is the first one of the English beers for Christmas. Now, it's not specifically a Christmas beer. They've got it down as a Ruby Ale, and Ruby Ale is a nice style. I do like it. It's usually very malt forward, nice, drinkable, sometimes sessionable. It can be quite strong. It's a bit of an ambiguous term because it doesn't really describe a type of ale. Some bitters get called Ruby Ales, some old ales get called Ruby Ales. It's one of them sort of ambiguous terms, but generally I like the style. Now, this brewery, as I say, they come from Yorkshire. They are based in a place called Holderness, which is in Yorkshire. Percy, this is not going to work between me and you because you keep grabbing me mic cable, yeah? And it ain't going to work if you keep doing that. Alright, so I'm going to put you back down on the floor. God, I don't know if I weigh some of that dog. Jesus Christ. Yeah, they've been going since 2007, and I like what they do. But there is one thing I don't like about this brewery, and it concerns IPAs. Now, they do traditional English beers, and they have the whole range of English beers, and they've got an IPA. But I've got it downstairs. I am going to review it as well. And I sort of bought it to make a point, as if the point didn't need making already. But it's a Christmas IPA. If ever there was evidence that the term IPA doesn't mean a thing anymore, then that's it. IPA is, honestly, don't get me started. I could rant for days about the term IPA and what it should be and what it's being used as, what it's being used for, some of the things they pass off as IPAs. Honestly, don't get me started. Anyway, let's park that bus and let's get on to this beer. Right, this is a 500ml bottle. It's 4.6%. They've got it down as a ruby ale. Okay, let's give that a go. There is no brew sheet, unfortunately. It just says on the back, ruby coloured winter warmer, brewed using the finest British hops and great Newsome homegrown malt. Oh, interesting. Rich, comforting depths of chocolate and roast malt flavours give way to subtle spice and orange fruit hop notes. Comfort in a glass. Now, they've called it a winter warmer, which is interesting. They've got ruby ale and winter warmer. Winter warmer is actually a style of beer, and it's a variant of the old ale style. Winter warmer usually is a festive beer for around the winter months, and it's usually quite high in ABV. Does contain a lot of dark fruit. It's usually a dark beer, and it does contain a lot of the dark fruit and spiciness that you would expect in a rich old ale. So again, it's a bit of an ambiguous term, this ruby ale that they've got on here, but I'll just go with what the beer's like. So let's get it open and let's see what's going on with this. Right, get ye oldie cap lifter on the go. The missus has been in an hospital. She has had her gallbladder out, and she is a bit under the weather at the moment. She's recovering. It was a relatively straightforward operation, couple of complications, but she's all right now. The other dog, little Bobby's in there with her now, so I'm dog sitting Percy, hence the reason he's here. But he's been hanging around me since I got this beer open, and he's looking at me now. I don't know if he's giving me the stink eye or whether he's saying, I want some of that beer, but there it is in the glass. Looks pretty much like a ruby ale. It's a very dark amber colour. I wouldn't say it's ruby, it's very dark amber. What would you make of that? Draw your own conclusions. On the nose. Oh, that does smell malty. Sweet malt. And fruity as well. But the aromas are subtle. I don't know what it is, but lately the aromas on beers have not been big. I'm wondering whether it's my sense of smell. I know your eyes go and your ears go and your teeth go, but does your sense of smell go when you get to be an old bastard like me? Yeah, it's little hints of roasted malt, not much. It's a fairly chocolatey. Well, no, is that chocolate? It's more of a caramel, I'd say. Caramel-esque smell from the malt. And that's about it. But the aromas are dying quite quickly, which is a little bit worrying. Either, as I say, it's either my sense of smell or the beer just doesn't have a lot of aroma. Usually, it's not a good sign, but I have been surprised in the past. But usually, nice aroma equals nice beer. There it is. Nice foamy 1.5 finger white head. I would struggle to call that ruby. I'd say that's a very dark amber, but splitting hairs there again. Let's get it down the hatch and see what's going on. That's not bad. Wow. There's quite a bit of bitterness on that, on the finish. If they'd called this a bitter, I would have said that was quite accurate. The colour and the flavours do suggest that it's more of a bitter. Ruby ales I tend to find a sweeter, and this has got a little bit of spice, but it's also got some bitterness on there as well. Let me dive in again. There is some hints of chocolate malt on there, and there's some quite big spicy notes on there, and the spice is like a sort of a black pepper mixed with dark fruits. Percy, you're not getting up here, mate. This beer is for me and me only. It's not putting me in mind of a winter warmer though, I have to say. It's putting me in mind of a best bitter. Lovely mouthfeel, I will say that. It's very nice. The body's not that big, but the mouthfeel is superb. Wow, and there's more spiciness now. It's sort of nutmeggy type black pepper. Bitterness. I mean, I'm sure some of that's coming from the hops as well. Percy, what are you trying to do? Get down. I'm quite liking this. This has got some quite nice characteristics, I have to say. Yeah, wow, the bitterness on there is quite big. I'd love to know what hops they're using in here. But to me, it's more like a strong flavoured English bitter, best bitter, I would call that. But I do like the finish. The finish is quite long lasting on this. And you've got the chocolate malt, a slight hint of roasted malt on there, and altogether quite balanced. And as I say, the characteristics on that, typically English. You would not confuse that with anything. You may confuse it with an alt. It's got that it's got that bitterness that you tend to find on some decent German alt beers and some English best bitters as well. But as I say, as a winter warmer or an old ale or even a ruby ales, I tend to say they're sweeter than this. They contain a little bit of invert sugar in them, ruby ales sometimes, and this hasn't got any of that in there at all. This is more in keeping with your traditional English ale, bitter, best bitter, that type of thing. But it's nice. I mean, on its own strength, regardless of the description, on its own merits, the beer isn't bad at all. Yeah, no complaints about that. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good stab at an English style beer. You can argue about the terminology, you can argue about the description, but if somebody handed that to me in a pub, I would quite happily drink that. I could probably drink that all night actually. It's quite nice. The mouth feels good. The body on it, it's not as big as some bitters I've had, but it's still good. I mean, it's pretty consistent and it's doing everything right. But yeah, no complaints at all. So what is the verdict on Great Newsome Winter Warmth? Well, as a ruby ale, yeah, I'd question that description. I mean, the colour is, to me, it's a dark amber. It's got more in common, colour-wise and flavour-wise, with a really good bitter. in my opinion, and it's not putting me in mind of a Christmas beer. Now, this is seasonal beer. It's come out for Christmas, and it's not what I'd associate with Christmas. This would be your typical English best bitter that you'd find in a decent country pub. What I look for in Christmas beers is very rich old ale style beers, lots of fruit, lots of spices in there, some invert sugar, quite high ABV as well, and very full bodied. And this, it's lacking on some of them. It's not the most full bodied beer. It's not really high ABV. It's 4.6%. So yeah, it's divided me, because on its own merits, don't just take away all the fluff and all the gumph, it's not a bad beer. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. But packaged up like that, winter warmth, ruby ale, nah, it's not really doing that for me at all. But it's okay. I mean, if you like bitter, if you like your sort of English ale, this is really nice. It's perfect, and I could just imagine that being poured from cask in a pub from the People's Republic of Yorkshire. But it's nice. I do like that. Yeah, no complaints. Nice chocolate malt on that as well now. That's really coming through. These are all room temperature. I'm deliberately keeping all these winter beers at room temperature. That's the way they should be drunk. You don't tend to stick these winter warmers or these Christmas beers, especially English Christmas beers, you don't tend to put them in the fridge. They're supposed to be drunk at best cellar temperature. Normally it's sort of room temperature, slightly chilled, and that's what I've done with this. I'm getting all the flavours, and yeah, it's very nice indeed. 7.5 out of 10, and recommended. And remember, beer is working class champagne.